baby. Yes, oh, baby. Dreams of you all the time. It's so good when we're together now. Just can't wait until tomorrow night. Hey baby, let's shake it. Oh hey baby. Hey hey baby. Yes oh baby. Yes oh baby. Out in the moonlight, looking up for the stars above. Feels so good when I'm near you, holding hands and making love. Oh, oh baby. Yes, oh baby. Yes, oh baby. Yes, oh baby. Yes, oh baby.
This is a beautiful track. It's Donny and Joe Emerson, a track called Baby. You might recognise it though because it was covered by Ariel Pink in 2012. Really interesting story about this original version though. Donny and Joe, they're brothers and they began working on music together in the 70s, and their father was one of those fathers who wanted to be a musician and never was, so put so much pressure on his sons to be musicians. He even gambled the family farm on his son's music career, but they really had no commercial success when that song was released back in the 70s. But there was a record collector back in 2008 that found their album in an antique store, and he just thought it was amazing, shared the songs online, and it's become more well-known now, that song. Which leads me on to 10 really interesting / random facts about the music industry. There's a tweet going around, or a sort of post that's going semi-viral at the moment about the music industry and how artists succeed or don't succeed with record labels and the music industry. Let me just read you a couple. 10 random facts about the music industry. Less than 1% of artists make it as a mainstream artist. Number 2, the average song length, you might know this, is 3 minutes 42. So if you were to go and write a song and you want it to be a hit, make it 3 minutes 42 and you'll have a good chance. Apparently musicians earn an average of $30.39 an hour. Artists only get paid on Spotify if a track is streamed for more than 30 seconds. And this is so interesting. So if you start a track on Spotify and you don't like it and you skip it within 30 seconds, that musician that you've skipped will get no money or anything from that. Apparently major record labels sign 650 new artists a year on average. However, 99% of artists signed to a major record label never get a release of their first album. I'll leave it at that. Some thoughts, some food for thought, as you say. I did say it was a little bit sad and depressing, but one artist or one band that have made it huge without the support of a major record label of Fat Freddy's Drop. And the frontman of Fat Freddy's Drop released a single last year that we love. It's called No Flowers, and Dallas said he wrote the song about powerful women in his life, and this is it. It's Dallas Tamara, Flowers. News coming up very soon. It's just on 3 minutes to 1. Here on RNZ National, I hope your Saturday afternoon is beautiful.
She's no flower, but there's beauty in her power. She's no angel, but you're welcome at her table. 3 in the morning by the river, underneath the willow tree. That's the first time I saw her. Oh, Romeo Queen. And we still here after all these years. She's no flower, and for her I count the hours. She's no angel, but the way she holds it down is graceful. And in the winter she don't wither like the other flowers do. That's how I know they broke the mold when they made you. Oh, 'cause you're so much more than just another face in the water. Flowers for my love. Oh, 'cause you're not so sweet, and that's good for me. Flowers for my love. Oh, but I'll give you my time and a place in my garden, babe, for the rest of your life. She's no flower, but there's beauty in her power. She's no angel, but you're welcome at the table.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Caroline McElnay and I'm the Director of Public Health here at the Ministry of Health. Today, the Ministry of Health is confirming an individual who had previously been a guest at the managed isolation facility at the Pullman Hotel has tested positive for Covid-19. This individual, who is asymptomatic, has been isolating at home in Hamilton since the 30th of January and previously returned 3 negative tests, the most recent one being on the 2nd of February. We are awaiting further test results on this person, but based on our current assessment of the circumstances, we consider the public health risk to be low, and people in and around Hamilton should not be alarmed. We are acting out of an abundance of caution. We are not advising any restrictions or cancellation of events. The positive test has been picked up on day 5 outside of managed isolation as a result of recent measures put in place for guests who have completed managed isolation at the Pullman Hotel. As well as their routine testing on days 0, 3 and 12 while in a facility, there is a requirement for all Pullman managed isolation guests to self-isolate for 5 days following completion of the 14 days in managed isolation and to return a negative test at day 5. Today's case reinforces the importance of the self-isolation and repeat testing strategy that we have adopted around the Pullman Hotel. So I'm just going to give you some details about today's case. The person who has tested positive is a recent returnee from overseas. The person was in managed isolation from the 16th of January to the 30th of January and returned negative tests during their stay on the 20th of January and the 28th of January. A further test on the 2nd of February also came back negative. On the 4th of February, the person who has been asymptomatic had another test, and this came back positive yesterday afternoon. Early PCR results showed a high CT value, which may indicate a historical case. However, a further rapid test has returned a CT value of 33, indicating the case is active. Once again, we are acting from an abundance of caution, and further tests are underway to give us more information. The person is now being transferred to the Auckland quarantine facility. With regard to contact tracing, the person who tested positive lives in Hamilton with 2 other people. Both people are being treated as close contacts, and they have been tested, and I'm pleased to report that both have returned a negative result. They have not displayed any symptoms. While the 3 people live together, today's positive case has told public health officials that they wore a face mask in communal areas of the household and that they isolated away from the household contacts. In terms of testing advice and our testing centres, test results and further interviews with the household contacts will help us determine if there are any locations of interest. But to reiterate a point I made earlier, at this stage we consider the public health risk to be low. At this stage there are no exposure events, meaning there are no known locations of interest. If this changes, we will let you know. Based on the current information, the only people who need to get tested are, as always, people who are symptomatic. This applies to people in Hamilton, the wider Waikato, and indeed throughout New Zealand. People who are well do not need to consider being tested. Get tested if you have symptoms. Waikato District Health Board is taking a precautionary approach and has expanded their testing capacity in Hamilton at the Founders Theatre site. It is also setting up an additional testing centre at Claudelands Event Centre, and that will be available from midday today. Details of these and all other testing facilities in the region are available on the DHB's website. People who are concerned or who have symptoms or need information relating to testing should contact Healthline on 0800 358 5453. And lastly, just about the Pullman, we have been investigating the systems in place at the Pullman Managed Isolation Facility, and this latest case will be part of the ongoing work we will be doing. The last remaining guests in the Pullman Managed Isolation Facility are due to leave tomorrow, and we will update the decisions on those guests when further results are available. So we'll come back to you with findings as we get them as the day emerges. So lastly, on today's other numbers, further to the positive case we are reporting today, there is one new case at the border and one historical case. One previously reported case has recovered. This brings our total number of active cases to 64. Our total number of confirmed cases is 1,962. I'm happy to take questions.
How confident are you that this person went home and self-isolated and didn't go out anywhere else?
We're very confident. That's been something that our public health unit at Waikato has asked a lot of questions of the individual. The individual, like all people who are discharged from the Pullman facilities, receive a daily call from our National Contact Tracing Centre. That has been occurring, and that's obviously an opportunity to reiterate the advice to stay at home. So the information that we have, yes, we're very confident that they have complied.
And that's why you're saying that this is a low public, or a low...
That's right. That's right. They've stayed at home. They haven't been anywhere else. There are no other areas of interest. And as I said, they've got 2 close contacts, and those close contacts, the results just in this morning, they've tested negative. So that gives us a very high degree of assurance that if this case is an active case, then it is well contained.
How did they get from Auckland to Hamilton, and are you confident that they didn't make any stops along the way?
We're just checking on the information for that. I haven't had an update, but we're getting that information.
What do you think the chain of transmission was for this person to get infected?
We don't know yet. As I say, we're still waiting for the further test results to come back. It may be that with those CT values, it may be that this person could be a historic case, but we cannot rule out the possibility that they are an acute infection. And if that's the case, our most likely hypothesis would be that would have been in the Pullman. But as yet, we're unable to give you the details of how that's happened. We still have to do the investigation to find out about times and movements.
Did you say that this person is still asymptomatic?
Yes, they are completely well.
Have they been transferred to quarantine, or are they just staying at home?
The case that we've identified, that they are being transferred to Auckland, to Jet Park, to the quarantine facility there.
Were they near any of the other cases at the Pullman? Do you know?
From the information that we've got, we know that they were on the same floor as some of the other cases, but we're just really looking at the timelines here because what we've seen with the other cases in the Pullman is the cases were dispersed across the hotel, and it was more their being in the same place at the same time rather than being in the same place.
So at this stage in the investigation, do you have any idea how the transmission might be occurring within the Pullman?
In general, the transmission in the Pullman, we're still actively investigating that. We have had an in-depth review that's been undertaken by Auckland Regional Public Health into the cases that we know. What I can say is there's nothing that is highlighted as a single point, and we're doing further work on that. Of course, when we get the details of this case, if indeed it turns out that this person is a new case, that will go into the mix.
Why was this person on the same floor as the people that had the South African strain of the virus?
This person would have been admitted back in on the 16th of January, so my assumption is that that's where they were placed. I've got no information that they moved rooms at all while they were in the facility.
Is 5 days isolating post-quarantine long enough based on those things, or would the ministry be considering thinning that out a bit?
We're looking at all the options that we need to do to make sure that both our quarantine and isolation facilities are providing a good integrity of infection prevention, as well as then what we need to do afterwards. That's something that is under active review. It's certainly, at the moment, based on what we know from the previous cases, is a very sensible precaution to put in place, and that is both the self-isolation and then the further testing at day 5. But as always, throughout our whole experience with COVID, we're always continually reviewing our systems and just checking to make sure that they are the best that they can be.
So will you look at extending that 5 days isolation to all MIQ facilities?
It's too early to make any comments about that, but we will be looking at what this case, if indeed it turns out to be a case, suggests in terms of our management for our guests in the facilities, both in the facility as well as when they come out of the facilities.
Do you know if the case today was the South African variant, or do you have that information?
No, we don't yet have whole genome sequencing on this particular individual. That's obviously being processed. That's routine for us now, and we ask for these urgently in these sorts of situations, and we'll be able to update you when that information comes through.
How many other people are still at the Pullman and yet to be discharged, or are still carrying out their 5 days isolation?
I'm sorry, could you start at the beginning of that question?
How many people are still at the Pullman, and how many people are still from the Pullman are still doing their 5 days isolation at home? Do you know? So how many people are still to go through the whole?
We can get you the detailed numbers afterwards, but I was advised this morning there are 60 people who are left at the Pullman, and they will be due for discharge tomorrow. As you're aware, we stopped taking new arrivals into the Pullman, so we've been gradually emptying the Pullman, and my understanding is that the guests who are due to leave tomorrow would be the final tranche to leave the Pullman, and then it will be completely empty. We'll undergo a deep clean, and that will be the time for us to review what additional systems or improvements, upgrades need to be made should the Pullman be brought on stream again as a facility.
Is this the safest thing to do, though, to let these people out into the community? If they're still, people still testing positive? I understand that you've got to do something with the Pullman, but should they be let back out into the community or go to a separate facility, for example?
Well, we are reviewing all the figures that we've got. What we do know from the numbers who have been released from the Pullman since the first incidents we became aware of is that the cases who have tested positive since leaving the Pullman is only a very, very small number. And as I said, we still yet don't have confirmation that this is indeed an acute case. But of course, we will be continually looking at what we need to do. But at the moment, it is a sound strategy.
Can you give us some sort of indication as to the timing around when this person entered isolation? Was it after the Northland and Auckland cases had left?
I'll have to get back to you on that. It's the 16th of January is the date that they entered, and we can get back to you on the specific timelines there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will you consider removing common areas from MIQ facilities?
Well, certainly common areas is one of the areas that we've looked at, and as I say, we are reviewing what needs to be in place, both at the Pullman and across the facilities. Movement of guests is clearly a very important part of managing the integrity of your facility. So looking at common areas is certainly something that we are doing, but we haven't provided that advice yet to do that. What we do want to have in place are opportunities for people, obviously, to exercise, and we're very mindful of the stress and the mental health impacts of being in these facilities are. But of course, we have to balance that against keeping both themselves and other guests and staff in those facilities and the wider community safe.
How are people getting their day 5 test? Are they going to the local testing station, or is the ministry official sent out to their residents where they're self-isolating?
I think that varies depending on where they are, and we can get you the specific details of this individual. They are, as I said earlier, our contact tracing service is in touch with them on a daily basis, and then they, depending on where they are, work out the best way of getting that test so that we can keep the community safe. So it will vary from place to place.
Do you have any more information on the air conditioning system and whether that's contributed to the spread?
As I said, we have looked at the Pullman and at the ventilation systems in the Pullman, and once we've got all the information, we'll be pulling this together into a report.
When will that come out, that report? Do you know?
I can't give you a final date for that report, but we'll get back to you on that.
In the
Sorry,
case
the person-
context, are they isolating at home?
Yes, they are. Yes.
The person, the Hamilton case, left on the 16th, but the Northland case they were discharged. Sorry, the person today, they arrived on the 16th, but the Northland case had left on the 15th of January. So is it concerning to you that there was no actual way for them to cross over?
As I say, we're still investigating this case. This case may not be an acute case, but also because we know that there have been other cases in the Pullman, we don't yet know where the source of this individual could be. That is where the whole genome sequence will certainly help us narrow down on any potential source. So at this moment, we haven't ruled out any possibilities.
Has there been CCTV footage or information that shows that one of the group of people who tested positive in the Pullman and this new case were near enough to each other or in a common space?
We don't yet have that information, but that is part of the investigation that is routine when we've had these small number of cases. So last couple of questions.
With quite a lot of these Pullman cases, you're getting negative tests in a row, and then they go home and suddenly they get a positive test. Why is that? Any concerns about the integrity of the testing system?
That is something that certainly we have discussed and we have flagged with the Northern Region who manage the swabbing of the guests in our facilities. It really is critical that the swabbing that happens across the board everywhere is done to the highest standard. And so we've asked for that assurance that those swabs are being taken properly and appropriately. We've been provided with that assurance. We have noticed in other situations that sometimes when people are in a managed facility, they can test negative, and then sometime later, we've seen this with some of our historic cases, some months later, for some reason, they have presented for testing and a positive result has come back, but it's confirmed that they are historic. And so I think there is a suggestion that for some individuals, if they develop other viral illnesses or a little bit unwell, that it may bring the fragments of the COVID virus to the fore so they can be picked up. So I guess there's still a lot that we're still learning around the testing, but certainly we have identified the need for really good testing to happen in our facilities.
Do you have confidence in the testing currently?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Will you look at extending managed isolation from 14 days to 21 days?
That's one of the things that we have looked at. There's no evidence at all from overseas that the new variants of the virus that we're seeing have any longer incubation period. Again, the critical thing here is that we have a highly well-developed quarantine and isolation facility, and the 14 days, based on what we know from the science, the 14-day period is the required period. So I'll just take a last question.
It sounds like the ministry is looking into an awful lot of things. I mean, today you've looked at the common areas and just then the length of time that people have to isolate for. Is it safe to say that there's some sort of structural review of the whole system in place at the ministry at the moment? There is an in-depth review both of the Pullman but also of our quarantine and isolation facilities. That's work that has been underway for a number of weeks. Again, that's critical that we have confidence in those facilities. When will we have the results of that report or any announcements made from that?
I'm not able to give you a precise date, but those investigations are well underway. I'll leave it. I'll take one last question.
What is the morale and the sort of the vibe within the ministry? It seems like we've had these little cases that have been marginal or have been sort of strange in some way, and then we've also been kind of lucky, like that this hasn't broken out. You know, are people in the ministry kind of scratching their heads and going like, "Should we just like dodge several bullets here?" What is the kind of top level thinking or the kind of chat around the water cooler? You know?
I think we are scratching our heads a little, but I don't think that's because we're scratching them with anxiety. We are seeing slightly different from expected, what we might expect. Certainly if you look at what's been happening in Australia, we're seeing a very similar pattern where our expectation from what we've seen from overseas is these new variants could lead to increased number of community cases. We are seeing with the very small numbers who've been infected in the facilities, we're not seeing any further cases in the community. We don't know if that's luck. But we certainly have very strong systems to be able to rapidly respond, as does Australia, and both countries are seeing a very similar thing. Is we're not seeing that further spread, but we don't want to make people complacent, and we're certainly not complacent. But at the same time, we're not overly anxious. We just are trusting in our systems, which are very good, and they've been practiced over some months, and we continue to refine them every single time we have an incident. And we'll continue to do that. So thank you very much. Thank you.